Hi, this is Robert Clinkenbeard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. We're going to take 20 minutes of your life to deliver some amazing content from accomplished leaders and business owners to provide you with some value to help you scale your business, become a better leader, and push yourself out of your comfort zone into something which is going to stretch you. We really hope you enjoy these shows, and we really encourage you to like and share with your friends and network, which is only going to help us get a wider audience and improve our industry. I'm super excited to announce that in 2023, we're going to be announcing new partnerships, digital courses, some rebranding, and your opportunity to be coached by one of our many industry leaders, experts, or coaches. Cheers, everyone. Hi, this is Robert Clickybeard with the Commercial Landscaper Podcast. I'm really excited today to be joined by Mark Bradley. Mark, welcome to the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I just offline there, I was just finding out a little bit more about you in terms of CEO, founder of Landscape Management Network, and ran a multi-million-dollar company. Really impressive because I, obviously never heard of you before. I hate to say that, but be honest. But Mark, I'd love you to tell the audience. We have listeners from all around the world: Australia, Europe, Asia. And maybe just they can learn a little bit more about you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I started a landscape company back in late 90s, and it was growing very quickly throughout the early 2000s. And we did a lot of landscape design build work, a lot of snow management services, as well as some landscape maintenance, primarily on commercial properties. And so over the years, as the business was growing, I was finding it harder and harder to manage all of my remote crews out working and performing the work and trying to get, optimal customer experiences while maintaining quality and efficiency and generating a profit. Became a big challenge as the business was scaling. And so that kind of forced me to build software. And so around 2005, I started building what became Landscape Management Network. And over the years, as both businesses were growing, we really sort of refined the software, and it became what it is today.
That's awesome. Tell me. I mean, I'd love to hear these stories about how did you get into landscaping in the first place? I mean, it sounds like you built a great big company yourself, but how did you get into the industry in the first place?
Yeah, I think like many others, I kind of fell in love with it in high school. I started working in landscape, helping a few friends out and whatnot, and really enjoyed the work. I liked the physical aspect of the work. I played hockey, and I kind of saw the work as almost training in a way. So really enjoyed doing the actual work of landscape maintenance and tree planting and that kind of thing. And then I found myself starting to do jobs on my own. I was doing a lot of planting and a lot of renovation type work and whatnot. And I had the good fortune also of growing up in a family of construction people, and I built a few houses over the years with my dad and my brother, and kind of learned a lot of the trade skills that way. So shortly after high school, I actually did a full apprenticeship program in a nuclear business. And as I was going to college, I always found myself more and more interested in landscape and less interested in the nuclear industry. So I kind of pivoted in my early 20s and started a landscape company. And it grew very quickly. I had the good fortune of being in a good market in Toronto, Ontario, and found the business was growing faster than my business know-how. So hit many bumps on the road along the way, but kind of found myself taking a lot of education and training specific to landscaping, and the more that I could learn, the faster that I could apply it. So it was always a learning exercise owning a landscape company for me, which made it a fun challenge.
No, for sure. And I think we all experience that, whether it be landscaping or any other sort of trade business, you get into it with your, your expertise. But as the business grows, you think, well, I don't really have that knowledge or experience in how to grow or scale a business. So we all go through the mistakes. We all go through those different plateaus. I do a lot of scaling up coaching, and yeah, I mean, I think sometimes when people are so much in the weeds, they can't see some of the obstacles that they're dealing with. So it's just that it's only when they either bring somebody else on, like a coach, or they take a step back, they think, oh, these are the 2 or 3 key things I need to do to, release that barrier and scale the business. What were some of the things that you, I suppose, experienced as you grew your business?
Yeah, I think the first thing that became obvious. So my business, I hit $1 million in sales in my first year because we were doing so much installation work. So the project sizes were a little bit larger than average, and so we found ourselves scaling up, I think, a little faster than expected, and it just I think I was quite surprised even at a lot of the opportunities I was getting, but there was just more demand than there was contractors at the time. And so what I found very quickly was my lack of understanding of budgets and overhead recovery and how to mark up the work or the cost of the work effectively to recover overhead and really obtain the profits that I was expecting. I think that was lesson number one. And I felt like I was learning that lesson fairly quickly, understanding the cost of materials and estimating how much time things take. Those things I was pretty good at, but understanding how to apply overhead recovery in a methodical way to really truly charge the customer enough money to make a paycheck as an owner, cover all of those overhead costs, and then still have some profit to put back into the business. That I would say was probably lesson number one in my first few years in business. And I think if any good technician learns those skills early enough, then they're set up for success long term. You can afford to make some other mistakes if you are charging your customers enough to make a profit.
No, that's so true. And it's actually really interesting when I come across even companies that are doing 5, 10, 15 million, and you talk to the owner about the financial piece, it just their eyes glaze over. I mean, what were some of the resources that you used just to get some of that knowledge, that financial knowledge, the budgeting, the overhead recovery? I mean, how did you find that information?
Yeah, I think I was fortunate in the college programs that I was taking in the nuclear industry. I did a lot of estimating and project management. And so I had a good foundation, I would say, of education combined with fieldwork experience. So I kind of understood, I think, how to estimate, and I understood how to do takeoffs very well and the technical side. And so I immediately started to focus on the business side of things, as I could see that profits weren't as good as they should be after doing job costing. And so I think what I really started to focus on was looking at other industry companies and understanding benchmarks. And I quickly found that there was some benchmarks available through the trade associations. And then I kind of started to speak to some industry consultants. So there was 2 main consultants early on that I met with, and both had different philosophy on overhead recovery, but in any case, both made sense to me. And so what I found myself doing is kind of creating my own system of job costing and overhead recovery that was really I would say somewhat standardized, in the business world. I would just kind of created my own templates and spreadsheets to do it. And I found that worked well so that I could truly understand how much money we made or lost on each project.
No, that's awesome. That's awesome. And on that, in a related way, how important is, dealing with, processes and as you're growing your business, whether it be your landscape company, whether it be within LMN, how important is processes and just with building that, scaling that business?
Yeah, I mean, that's a fantastic question, and I've always been a huge fan of building systems and processes in the company to create standards. But what I have learned over the years is if I over systemize things and I don't put enough effort into training and awareness of key performance indicators that are actually going to drive success, then I think the systems are largely misunderstood and seen as a rule book as opposed to high value action. So what I kind of think throughout my career learned over is the more that I can educate my staff and really make sure that they understand what I'm saying, so that they can not only finish my sentences but form their own and really make decisions for themselves, knowing what success looks like, whether it's safety success, efficiency success, quality success. They need to understand what that actually looks like, and then they have to understand how the business succeeds, and that is really, I think, achieved best by allowing people to have some really solid insight into the company budget and the crew budget that they're working on, or the division that they work in, so they understand how the company makes profit, so that they can actually contribute to it. And so I've really put a lot of effort into creating training systems that kind of match up with field systems, so that people can perform the work with a little bit more autonomy and understand that the systems and processes that we have in place are just meant to drive really good outcomes and help people focus on doing the right things at the right times.
No, that's a great point. Interesting how a lot of companies will really struggle to do processes because I think it's just so foreign to them. They really don't know where to start. And eventually, once they get around to creating them, it's almost a case of, yeah, okay, I've now checked that box. They put that process, that workflow, whatever that looks like, then into a folder and just sits there collecting dust. But, I think you make a good point that if you make that a sort of a living, breathing document that people can, look at, that you can train them on, they're, constantly being looked at and it's evolving. I think that's, again, one of the keys to success. But one of the things I suppose recently, that light bulb moment came on is that if you expose that workflow or maybe that end result to different team members, whatever department that they're in, a lot of them can come with just slightly different perspectives. So that workflow or process can change and maybe be updated. We obviously touched on the technology piece. So things are obviously evolving probably quicker than ever before. So it's just interesting just to see, get people's involvement, get the training and get different people's perspectives or input, just to keep them updated. What's your thoughts on that?
I couldn't agree more. And I think that is the challenge in the landscape industry is we find new problems as the company evolves and as we start to service different customers or add different services or service different markets. And so the systems and processes in the business are ever evolving. And I think often, when we find a gap in our processes or our systems, we kind of solve it in the moment, but we don't necessarily do a great job at making everybody in the company aware of what that change is. And I think the reason that we're not good at that is because we work fully remote. And, lots of companies in the world had to adjust in COVID to work remote. And I kind of shrugged my shoulders when that happened, thinking, well, I've always ran a remote business. Every crew works fully remote, and we have to find a way to communicate what they should be doing and what their needs are fully remote. And I think the best way to do that is having regular training and having various training channels. And so some could be in person, some could be by dispatching text notices to update everybody in the company with small changes to process. Some could be computer-based training. We obviously LMN acquired GIE+ a couple of years back with that intent. We built custom course builder tools so that any landscaper can shoot a quick video and build their own course and deploy that to everybody in their company, with a few clicks, so that you can build training courses that solve real problems in your company and create process training so that everybody understands what the process is. And that could be something as simple as the fueling system. In one company, that might look different than it does in every other company. So if you want your gas cans stored in a certain cage and you want your trucks filled at the end of the day and you'd like to build a system around fueling, you put that system into our training system on GIE+ and deploy that, and everybody in the company gets training on the fueling system. And that way, that everybody has the training. And if it changes, you just update the course and dispatch it that way. And so for me, I really believe that whether it's a small company of 3 or 4 people or a large company with 300 or 400, you have to make people aware of what the systems are. And I think a big mistake that many business owners make, including myself, we create systems, but we don't do a good job at communicating what they are, why they're in place, who's responsible to maintain that system or process, and how it's going to be audited. And I think that's often just a function of a lack of training. And I think we don't put much time into training because we're fully remote. It's hard to train crews that are so widely dispersed, and it's hard to hold people back at the shop in the morning to do training because we have to kind of make hay when the sun shines, so to speak. And so I think a lot of the training has to be evolved in a way where it can be deployed while they're driving from site to site. Do a training video while you're driving from one job site to the next, or hit people up with group texts and emails to make them aware of changes in systems and processes. But in any case, I think it requires effort and consistency, and I think that's what is missing for most companies.
Yeah, you actually bring up a really good point, is that the old traditional way of training, where you bring everybody into a room and you try and go through it, and you see people at the back of the room almost disengaged, and you just know they're not paying attention. But as people have become remote, then use the technology out there, use the videos, use their smartphones to be able to make that training more available to them. It doesn't have to be a well-produced video that's 10, 15 minutes. People don't have that attention span, but if it's short snippets of videos, 2-3 minutes long, then that's probably a way more impactful. And it's interesting just seeing companies, the training and education seems to be one of the first things on the chopping block, whether it's budgets are reduced because of cost cutting, or maybe it's become the business becomes so busy that they just don't have time to training. But I think it's completely backward thinking that this should be training, and education should be the first things that they prioritize. Is that fair?
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think unfortunately it does kind of fall to the back burner for most companies, and so we struggle with quality, we struggle with safety, and we certainly struggle with efficiency in the industry. And I think if you can deploy training with short videos and short learning lessons, with a short quiz even, to ensure that they watched it and understood it, people are going to learn faster. They're going to understand the business. They're going to be a lot more engaged in the business, and you're going to see high value action items recurring in your business. And that could be everything from the way that your trucks are loaded and unloaded in the morning and at night, or the way that a crew starts a project. Don't start doing any work until the laser level's set up if you're out doing hardscape work. And like that's step one for the day. And so like teaching people how to use that laser level, using a course that could be deployed by video, and then having an on-the-job component where you test and make sure that they know how to use that equipment. Having that type of training in place, I think, really drives permanent change in the company, and particularly as companies are scaling. If you've got 50 or 60 employees and you want all of them to know how to use a laser level, you need to test that, and then you need that record somewhere. And so that's one example of, as we know, there's hundreds and hundreds of things that we need to train our staff to do. But the return on the time invested from training is just so high. It's the most compelling thing that we should be doing with our time. But as you point out, we're just too busy to get to it. And so I think so many business owners find themselves in a position where they truly don't have a training program in their company. And there's a lot of turnover with staff. And so they start to feel that it's not worth training because there's so much turnover. But what companies tend to notice is when they get really good at training, the turnover really slows down. People tend to stay. They feel like more committed to the role because they see themselves growing. The work feels a lot more fulfilling because they're learning, and so the training starts to pay off in different ways. But it's a cycle that you kind of have to start somewhere.
Oh, for sure.
Require some discipline.
For sure. Mark, I could easily spend another hour or two talking to you. I have so many different questions, can go to so many different directions, but we're running out of time here. Any parting words for any, up and coming, progressive type company that are just looking for, how do I take myself to the next level? How do I break through this glass ceiling?
Really good question. I mean, a few things that we always recommend. I always recommend finding good mentors. If you don't have one in your community, search out a coach. I think it's a fantastic way to learn quickly. Myself, I feel like, every time I read a book, I get many years of knowledge. Every time that I have a mentor, I get many years of knowledge with action. And so I think finding somebody to help is a key component. And then finding the right tools to deploy in your business, whether it's heavy equipment or technology or, other things that save time and professionalize the business. I think that, really getting good at understanding the business and the tools that help you manage the business. And then really just ensuring that you can measure what you do, because if you can't measure what you're doing, then you can't improve it. And so I'm just a big believer in starting with a budget, learning how to estimate and apply overhead recovery markups efficiently, and then understanding how to job cost, just to make sure that that the foundational pieces are in place and that you are going to make a profit. And you can optimize that profit and optimize everything in the business when you understand how to do it repeatedly, and that requires job costing. And so I think I always try to lean on finding help, and then putting the right tools in place to make sure that you can measure what you're doing.
That's awesome. Great advice there, Mark. It's been a real pleasure talking to you today. How do people get in touch with you just to find out a little bit more about either Mark Bradley, about LMN? What's the best way for them to contact?
Yeah, great. I can be found on LinkedIn very easily. So just Mark Bradley from Landscape Management Network. And you can also find me on my website, just golmn.com.
Awesome. Mark, thank you very much today. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, but appreciate your time today. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Enjoyed the chat.
Okay, cheers. Thank you. Hopefully that was pure, dead brilliant for you today, and you got some great takeaways for your business or your leadership role. This is Robert Clinkenbeard, and we'd love to get you and your friends to join us in our future journey. So please subscribe through the various podcast channels or visit thecommerciallandscaper.com or brucewilsoncompany.com and check out some more information there. Anyway, hopefully you all have a pure, dead, brilliant day. Cheers, everyone.